Hey-o. That was a great. That, of course, was from Dawn of the Dead, the new one, when they were on the building shooting zombies.
I like that.
The dude does covers of Rage Against the Machine, a whole bunch of people. They're all on YouTube.
Yeah, we've got a favourite gentleman rhymer, similar thing, turns it all on its head with a ukulele.
Yeah, and I think he did some Cannibal Corpse. Actually. I've heard him do. Yeah, I've heard that guy.
He's funny.
Yeah, he's pretty funny.
Did we all just die? Hello, is anybody there? That one's for you.
You know what? Today has been nuts. Just trying to get here for this show. It's been. I broke a few laws getting home.
I had to use Jedi mind tricks on it. They were all running around like half an hour outside, you know.
Yeah.
Zombie, schoolgirl, army person, mugging people of sweets. And I was like, oh my God, the show starts in, 40 minutes?
I went to Walmart. And, you know, you see some of those people that go to Walmart, and then you see them in some of the costumes that they're wearing. They really shouldn't be out in public. Just, you know.
Yeah, well, I've seen and nobody was wearing makeup. Shopping malls are full of zombies anyway. It's the day for it.
That's not a muffin top. That's not a muffin top. That is a busted can of biscuits.
It's a cake shelf.
No, I really shouldn't be talking, but you know, I cover that shit up.
I have a wine shelf.
Yeah, there you go.
So, well, I think we've got a good show going to happen tonight. I think it's going to be quite interesting. Talking to Don Ecker. Don. Is he fallen off the internet, so what?
No, he's there. Don!
I'm here. I just was waiting for my cue, you know.
you were totally rubbing one out. Just admit it.
He was waiting for all important DNA results on Jerry Springer.
Well, you know, right now it's usually when I'm taking my afternoon nap, so.
Oh, nice work if you can get it.
Yeah, there you go.
So, what's going on, Don?
Well, not much. I do have one question for you, though, Sasha.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember about 3 weeks ago what you told me? In connection to doing tonight's show?
Yep.
What was that?
I would have read your book.
That's right. Now you're going to tell me you didn't.
I just said to Guy, I was so going to get spanked by Don. I promise you, I am moving hard. I have not even had a second. The kids are on holiday. There was an earthquake, a flood, a plague of locusts. A friend came in from out of town. It wasn't my fault.
Yeah. And my dog ate my homework. I know.
Yeah. Both ate the dog. Yeah. No, I know, and I feel really bad about that because I actually want to know what you're going to be talking about, but I don't. So you've got the upper hand there, and again.
Well, I just checked Amazon.com in the UK, and the Kindle version of my novel, Past Sins, a novel of supernatural horror, is only being £1.90 is all they're asking for the Kindle version. Which that isn't bad, huh?
That is good. Kindle's good.
And I just bought a Kindle HD.
Yeah, my son got one for his birthday today. I'm so jealous. I got the touch, but it looks like a Windows 95 machine in comparison to it. So it looks like about 100 years old, but it's only like 7 months old. No.
Yeah, man. I mean, it is. I watch movies on that thing, and it is just amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, last week I upgraded and got a new Samsung Galaxy S3 phone. And I got to tell you, it shocked the hell out of me because this thing is about, it's like a Swiss Army pocket knife. You can do everything on this except mix the perfect martini, let me tell you.
Oh, no, you can. You can get an app for that.
Well, it can tell you how to mix a martini. It doesn't mix it for you, though.
No.
So, is your book for sale in the United States?
Oh, it's been on Amazon for a number of years.
Dude, you're just a man of all sorts of surprises.
Oh, you didn't know I was an author? Oh yeah, it's I've always been into supernatural horror, and even science fiction. As a matter of fact, I'm working on something right now called A Person of Interest, which is actually a science fiction novel, but it's a combination of science fiction and horror. But my novel Past Sins, the hook of the book is, what if vampires were real? If they really, really were real. And the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, got their hands on one. Well, then what the hell would they try to do with it? And that's what the book is, and how it turned around. Their little black op turned around and bit them on the butt big time. So that's basically what it's about. Past Sins by Don Ecker. If you're sitting by a computer there, guy, and you zip by Amazon, you can find it right away. But it's been out for a few years now.
That's pretty cool. Do you have? You probably know some copy editors.
Yeah.
Good. I need one.
Not to mention my wife is an editor. Yeah.
Oh, really? Yeah, I have my mom back in the 80s started a novel, and I took it over in the 90s and finished it. And I've had a lot of interest in it, but they had wanted me to change some things that I thought were central to the story, and didn't want to change, so I just let it lie. And a couple of years ago, I did some more editing and that sort of thing, and I need a copy editor. So when we get offline, we can have a conversation about that.
Sure. Sure, I can't make any promises naturally.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Sure.
All right, cool. Yeah, it's called Sarah's Beast, and it is about the mother of the Antichrist and how she became the mother. It's all that story.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So, I've been sitting on it for a while, and I kind of want to get it out there now.
Well, outstanding. That's great. Good luck with it.
So, did the storm kill your show the other day?
Yeah. It's a matter of fact, I've been waiting since Monday afternoon. The last time I talked to anybody back in Boston was Monday morning. And it's been, they told me they were going to be getting back to me, and yesterday I shot them an email. Today I called them. I got their answering machine. So to be honest, I'm not quite sure what in the world is going on or how bad they might have been hit. But they have, I've got hundreds of shows in the can, and I know that he programmed the master computer with a series of shows for this week. So, my show, Dark Matters Radio, will go on nonetheless unless they have a massive power outage.
Well, it's been a bit of a mess, hasn't it? All this, what is this, 33 people dead, 5 million without power? Just...
No, more like close to 60 dead.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
No, it's been,
that they found.
It was a massive slam on the East Coast. And, originally I'm from the East Coast, from central western Pennsylvania. And I got to tell you, the weather back there, especially the closer you get to the ocean, from what I understand, they really, really got hit hard with tremendous flooding. And New Jersey was practically washed away. So, and not to mention New York City. And there are still vast areas of Manhattan Island and other places that still don't have power. And they may not for days yet. So, yeah, it was quite a storm.
Yeah, I was in Philly, living in Philly when Irene hit, and that was pretty crazy. But this storm, I guess, was a couple Irenes. I mean, they washed away the boardwalk, a bunch of buildings that were there. It's just. Hoboken was completely flooded. I've seen some of the pictures, and it's just nuts. And it went clear to Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, that's how big the storm was.
It was, at one point, I covered an area of over 1,000 miles, from what I understand.
Wow.
Right.
And that's a big storm.
Yeah, Ontario, Canada. And then the higher elevations, instead of rain, they got snow.
Well, the Appalachians had a blizzard. I mean, here it's not even November yet, but yeah. So it's once what they say, once every 10 or 15 years, something like this is possible, and by God, it happened.
And we complain about the weather in England, and all it does is just rain.
Yeah, that's got to be depressing after a while.
Yeah.
You go on holiday and come back with wind burns.
Well, the last time The last time I was in England, Sasha, was August of '97, right before, as a matter of fact, Princess Di was killed. And that summer, they were having an unnatural heat wave. And I can remember being in downtown London, and Vicki and I were stumbling around looking for a pub, finally found one, and sat down and had a cold beer. And let me tell you what, I couldn't believe how hot it was and dry. Do you remember that year?
Yeah, vaguely. I was up to no good most of that year, so it's patchy.
Yeah, man, she don't remember.
No, see, well, it's 97, that's when I lost the plot after the UFO event thing, so, I can't really remember that year very well, to be honest.
Yeah, she was up in the mothership.
Channeling Brian from the Hollow Earth.
Everything was the Spice Girls 24/7 then.
Yeah, it was probably contributing to my suicidal tendencies then.
I couldn't believe it. Turn on the telly and everything was Spice Girls. I thought, holy God.
I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. That's awful.
Does anybody even remember that
Thanks for bringing up the bad memories, Don.
Does anybody even remember them now?
The Spice Girls, they were going to get together recently, and everyone were calling them Old Spice and laughing, and it happened for the Olympic ceremony or something that I completely boycotted. I just couldn't be bothered watching it. God, what a load of rubbish. Anyway, yeah, I think to that, I think they had an extra large stage for the Zimmer frames and what have you. But, so it's
Well, the next big thing I'm waiting for out of the UK is Skyfall. James Bond. It'll be here in a few days, and if the good Lord is willing and the river don't rise too much out here, I'm going to be at the first showing at the first theater the damn thing's playing at.
Yeah, I want to see that Taken 2 as well. That looks good. And I recommend Paranorman. I recommend you go see that. That is really good.
Okay.
So
John,
make a note.
Yeah.
Have you had any more run-ins with Cal Korff?
No. He basically disappeared back into the cracks under the sidewalk. Last I heard, he's scheming and scamming family in India, if you can believe that. So,
his princess that he was going to marry, whatever that brain fart was, is that the one?
Oh, well,
yeah,
no.
it's like
Princess Kumara or something like that.
Yeah, no, this guy is mentally ill, and and believe it or not, in one manner, I'm actually almost, not quite, but almost sorry for him. But the guy is mentally deranged or mentally ill. I mean, hey, for 10 years, he was trying to convince people that he was an officer in an intelligence unit that was originally begun by the Israelis and financed, now listen to this, financed by a Saudi prince to the tune of, I don't know, $25 million or something. And he was running around at the time, he was living in Prague, Czechoslovakia, running around in a half-assed uniform, a duck hunting shirt, a military-style jacket with American officer insignia on his shoulder boards and a cowboy hat. That should tell you that we got a 4-cylinder engine firing on only one cylinder. So
yeah. I hope he was wearing Crocs and socks.
I don't know.
Well, he's really fun to torment. I really miss tormenting him on a daily basis. It was just, he would go around and just attack different people, on different threads and stuff like that. And I would go on every single thread and just hammer them.
Yeah, it was a favorite spot of mine for a while as well.
Well, there's a lot.
I was going to say there was a group of guys, some British, some American, that are expats living in Prague, and also in the United States, that formed an ad hoc group called the Korfing Syndicate. Okay? And they really went after them. As a matter of fact, somebody even put up a website.
Cal Korff is an idiot.
Well, no, that's been there a long time. But this last one has only been around about a year or so, that completely documented all his craziness, all his claims, photographs, everything. And if you know who this guy is, it's worth at least one stop to go by there. Let me see if I can find it here, and I can tell you what it's called. But it's really a funny thing, and that's basically what drove the final nail into his online craziness. And the guy just completely withdrew. He couldn't handle it anymore. Well, if you go up to Cal Korff as an idiot, there are links to that, Cal Korff Exposed. So you can find it there, but it's...
well, we've all seen that before anyway, haven't we, Cal Korff Exposed?
Well, yeah, but I mean, the guy
There's a photograph of him with no shirt on, isn't there?
I think he's only been one or two steps in front of the guys in the white coat with a butterfly net. So,
yeah. Just round the corner from the rubber bus.
Yeah, how cool is it to to torment the mentally ill. I mean,
well,
it's not very cool.
He's different. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows exactly what he's doing. He really doesn't have anything else. It's people like Alfred Weber and Jeffrey Pritchett and these type of people. They got nothing. So they cut and paste and make up little fantasy worlds for them to live in. And then with Cal, I mean, it just went on for so long, is that when he makes friends with people now, he sounds intelligent. You know what I mean? He doesn't sound crazy, and people believe all that. And when you show people these websites, they're just like, oh, well, that's just disinformation. I mean, what do you say to that stuff?
Well, everybody's got to have a hobby, Guy. I mean,
yeah.
since the internet made its huge debut back in the early 90s, suddenly this craziness began to expand and explode, because now you can do all this mindless, moronic stuff from behind an anonymous keyboard.
Yeah.
And a lot of people took advantage of that.
Yeah, I got caught up in it in the 90s. You bet. Hale Bopp, all the Art Bell crap, Richard Hoagland, the dolphin people, all that stuff. I was just inundated with this stuff. All the reverse speech people and remote viewers, and I was just like, holy crap, there's this whole world of stuff that I don't know. And then after a while, I'm like, this is bullshit. You just start, I hadn't really met a lot of these people that were just insane, these conspiracy people,
Well, there's still a lot of them out there. We only have another month and a half. A little over a month and a half before it all goes away, according to some.
I know those same people that cry the end of the world are also the same people telling everybody to go occupy Wall Street and close down your bank accounts instead of go get a million credit cards and meet you on a beach for a full moon party. It's like if you truly believed the world was going to end, you would be so hopped in debt now and somewhere nice instead of on Facebook copy and pasting everybody else's shit saying the world's going to end, close down your bank accounts, make the economy collapse, blah, blah, blah. Well, what's the point?
Well, the economy's about ready to collapse without any extra help. So.
Yeah. What economy? I think it's all, everybody's just lost, aren't they? Looking for a new philosophy.
So, Don, what's some of the wackiness, some of the wackiest stuff that you have encountered over the years? Because you've been around a while. Investigator, a cop, author, lots of different things. So what's some of the crazy crap that sticks out in your mind that you've run into?
How long do we have, pal?
As long as you want, my man.
Yeah, a long time.
Some of the craziness that I've encountered. Oh my God. Well, I could write, and this is going to sound like I'm bragging or something, but honest to God, I could write several books on just that. Let me think. Well, actually there are several that immediately stick out in my mind. And some of the names may in fact be familiar to you, some of them may not. But, hey, you want crazy? I'll give you crazy.
I want crazy.
The driver of JFK's limousine was actually the guy that fired the fatal shot into President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Now, how about that one? That strike a bell?
Yeah, I've heard this, yeah. but I can't remember the providence of it.
Back in the late 80s, when I actually became actively involved in my beginning pursuit of the UFO phenomenon, I encountered in January of 1988 for the first time a guy by the name of John Lear. Okay, now I'm sure that's a name that many people will recognize. John Lear, who was the son of William Lear, okay, the founder of Learjet Lear-Sigler Corporation. Now, John Lear was an airline pilot. Actually, not people, but he was a cargo pilot. Flew for a number of different airlines over the years. Was a very accomplished pilot. And how did I bump into Lear? Well, at the time, I was a member and a very active participant in basically what was the seed bed, if you will, the seed bed of UFOs and the paranormal on the what was becoming the Internet. The name of the computer system, or they were actually bulletin boards around the country, and ultimately they went around the world, was an outfit called Paranet. Okay? Now, Paranet began out of Fountain Hills, Arizona. It was an outfit put together by a guy by the name of Jim Spicer. As a matter of fact, Spicer is on Facebook. Now, he only stayed in it a few years, then he dropped out and turned the reins of the Paranet system over to another guy that may or may not be familiar to your listeners by the name of Michael Corbin. Now, Mike and I were very good friends. Mike died a couple of years ago, unfortunately. He wasn't very old, but he had a stroke, and when he did, he pulled his car over and died right there in the front seat, and they didn't find him for a day or two, which was a very, very sad story. I mean, you know, I had known Mike. Hell, Mike had brought me down to Denver at one point to participate, and I debated Philip Klass, the infamous skeptic down there, at, I think it was Boulder University. But Mike and I were real good friends, and it was Jim Spicer that actually let me know about that. But at any rate, Paranet, on right around Christmas of 1987, John Lear uploaded to the Paranet system first, and then on to CompuServe, which was a pay-as-you-go system, a commercial system that was basically one of the forerunners of the Internet, a file that basically became known as the John Lear file or the John Lear document. Now, the first time I read that, and incidentally, this was almost exactly the same time as the infamous MJ-12 file or papers were uploaded. That's another very, important historical document in the annals of UFO research. Now, whether you think it's crap or real, I personally think it's crap. It was one of those documents that for a very long time turned UFO research on its ear. But at any rate, I read Lear's document, and it sounded like something out of a Harryhausen science fiction thriller. That basically, and I mean, this can be found on the web if you're not familiar with it, but basically this document written by John Lear alleged that not only were extraterrestrials or aliens were real, that they had come to Earth, they had formed secret agreements with the U.S. government, that in an exchange for alien technology, the government gave the aliens permission to abduct and experiment on human beings. Lear also alleged there was a secret base under the Archuleta Mesa down in, I believe it was New Mexico, the Dulce base, that the aliens and the U.S. government had a joint facility there, that in the very lowest levels of this base, the secret base, the aliens experimented on human beings, that they had vats where they were rendering humans. I mean, this was some pretty wild stuff. And I'll never forget my reaction when I first read this. I was just basically outraged. I thought, this guy's, where's this guy's handler at? I mean, who in the hell would ever believe something like this? So I decided to do what any good cop would do. I was just off the department, medically retired about a year and a half or so. So I tracked down his phone number. I called him up, and we had about, a 2 or 3 hour phone chat. Well, about a week later, Lear FedExed me a package, and honest to God, this thing must have weighed about 10 pounds, that included documents, videotapes, and some other stuff. I mean, just sent it to me. So I started going through it, and there was a lot of material in there, stuff that later became very, important in conspiracy circles. Hang on one sec. Sorry, my wife just came home, and I had to tell her to keep it down with this on a radio show. So, I started reading through this material, and there was a lot of stuff in there, including something called the Excalibur document. Now, what was this? The Excalibur document was a paper written, and at the time, Lear didn't tell me who wrote it. And later I was to find out the provenance of all this material. But it was written, according to Lear, by a scientist who had been in the process of designing a nuclear-tipped missile that could penetrate yards and yards and yards of, I believe the terminology was hard, tough soil or something like that. And,
bunker buster.
Yeah, well, a bunker buster, but it was actually, according to Lear, an alien buster, okay, with a small tactical nuclear warhead on it. And I'm reading this stuff, and, I'm not quite sure what in hell is going on because, I was very new then. A lot of this material was brand new. For example, the MJ12 documents that I had mentioned earlier. When I first read those, I can remember a chill going up my spine because of the possibility that this was an actual document generated by the U.S. government to brief an incoming president, and I'm talking about now circa 1952, and the president was Dwight Eisenhower. So, I was suddenly just awash in all this stuff. So I decided the best thing I could do was kind of sit back, take a deep breath, and let this stuff percolate, okay, and see where a lot of it went. Well, let me tell you, a lot of it went into what you see today. It caused the Lear document, the MJ12 document, and other stuff caused basically the UFO research arena to divide, and I'm metaphorically speaking now, into armed camps. You had your pro-Lear people. You had your anti-Lear people. You had your pro-MJ12 Bill Moore, Jamie Chandra people. You had your anti-Bill Moore, Jamie Chandra, MJ12 people. And literally the bickering, the fighting, the insults, the carrying on just seemed to explode all across the U.S. in UFO research circles, and then it spilled over into Europe. So on the heels of all this, in July of 1988, on the Paranet computer system, a new player entered. And this guy popped out of nowhere, uploaded a file on the Paranet system. Now, the way the Paranet system worked, the Internet was not really viable for common users at that time. It wasn't yet developed where, you know, anybody could go on. Hypertext protocol and all that stuff was still in its infancy. But
yeah, you had to be a member.
Right.
Of a bulletin board. They were on servers, and yeah, I used to go on those and stuff like that.
Right. Well, Paranet had this new file at Paranet Alpha, which was originally Jim Spicer was still in charge, and it was on a guy that had said he was in the Navy. The incident was on board a diesel submarine, not a nuke, but a diesel submarine in the mid-'60s, where this UFO that, according to his report, was the size of an aircraft carrier, came out of the ocean, flew up into the clouds, and sometime later came back down and entered the water once again. That was the original report. Now, the guy's name that put that report up there was a guy by the name of Milton William Cooper, or more commonly known as Bill Cooper. Now, Cooper was kind of a strange guy. A few days after this report surfaced, okay, he came back on the Paranet system claiming he had just been fired from his $75,000 a year job. And what he claimed was the reason he was fired, and incidentally later I was to do an extensive expose on this guy. You may or may not be aware of it. And I believe me, you know, being a former cop was good because I knew how to go about doing an investigation. I knew who I needed to call. I knew who I needed to talk to, and those kind of things. And this was not true, but this is what he was alleging at the time. And that he began to upload some more reports. Now, suddenly, he was a crew member, a lookout on board this submarine. The USS Tyroot was the name of the sub. Incidentally, I'm going from memory on all of this. I'm not reading it. So, you know, if I pause for a second, that's because I'm trying to dredge up
thinking
dredge up those facts. But he began to upload another series of files, and these files, in many regards, were almost identical to what Bill Moore of MJ12 fame had originally been putting on CompuServe and the Paranet and other places. And all this time, also in the wings, people were beginning to really go after Lear, John Lear. Now, Lear, for a long time, was very laid back, and you know, I thought some people had gotten pretty damned rude with him on a number of occasions, but he maintained his cool. And finally, I guess he had enough of it, and he started to shoot back a little. Excuse me.
As you do.
Yeah. So Cooper allied himself with John Lear and claimed that he could verify at least 50% of what Lear said. Now, how could he do that? Because suddenly he disclosed or alleged that he had been part of a top-secret naval briefing team in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in the early 1970s. And he was present at a number of briefings where, among other things, UFOs were discussed. This is what he alleged. So suddenly he was floating the idea that he was a military government insider. And a lot of people latched on to that. Now, when I was reading a lot of this stuff, I got to tell you, I was somewhat skeptical. I was in the Army, in the Armed Forces. I was in an outfit called the Army Security Agency. And in Vietnam, we conducted intelligence operations. So I had some idea of how these things worked. Now, his rank at the time was the equivalent of an enlisted rank of about an it was an E6. And some of this stuff that he was alleging, if it were true, would be classified above top secret. Now, how the military operates with something like that is you're only exposed to it if you have a need to know for whatever duties you're carrying out. So it never made sense to me that he would be privy to all this top secret information. Well, after he buddied up with John Lear, something else happened. Now, we're moving along about roughly not quite a year.
Okay, Don, 1 second. Didn't Clifford Stone kind of be isn't he kind of in the same thing to where he only had a certain rank, but he was supposedly privy to all this other information?
Oh yeah. Let me tell you, I've known Stone. I've known Clifford Stone almost as long as I've been involved in the UFO field. And back in the early 90s, let me say this about Stone. He did some outstanding research in the UFO field and had a propensity that he could garner documents and root and pull out documents from, various places using Freedom of Information Act requests and what have you. But then Clifford Stone did what so many people in this field end up doing, and that was he began to embellish his role in the field. Suddenly, in the late 90s and early 2000s, he had been a secret agent doing this and that. I did 2 tours in Vietnam, okay? And after Vicki and I, my wife and I, had to take business partners. And our role as far as saying what went and what didn't go in UFO magazine was diminished. In other words, we didn't have nearly as much pull to nix something if I felt or Vicki felt it needed to be nixed. They opened up the pages of the magazine to some of these stories, and I'll never forget Stone sent an article in which ultimately ended up being published. However, I did write a counter article in the same issue telling the world how he was, in essence, full of shit, okay? But in Vietnam, he claimed that his secret UFO contact would come out in the field where he was located at. And there were nights while there were nights when the Viet Cong were out climbing around, the wire of his camp. And he would sneak out through the wire to meet his intelligence contact, okay, with a knife clasped between his teeth. I mean, it's a real daring do. Now, did you ever see Cliff Stone?
Yeah.
He's about 5'8" and about 400 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now imagine Cliffy sliding out through the wire, okay, to go one-on-one with the Viet Cong. I mean, it was absolutely pure manure. And, that I got to tell you, I was really pissed off because the whole time that my wife and I had sole ownership of UFO Magazine, we strove and strived to keep that as legitimate and as honest as we could possibly do. And we did a lot of hard articles on the phenomenon. Not often, and as a result, we angered a lot of people because they wanted to have these fuzzy, feel-good, the aliens are here to save us from ourselves, they're going to show us how to build a better mousetrap, a humane one. And what are you guys doing with that? How come you're so negative? Well, it's not a matter of being negative. It was a matter of, hey, do you want to really know what's going on, or do you want to sit in the corner and play with yourself? Because that's, in essence, what so many people were doing. So, at any rate, I know Cliff Stone. I got off on a tangent there, didn't I? But to get back to Bill Cooper.
You know what, Don? There's not many people around like you that I know of that have a level head and were there and intimate with all this crap that was spewed out, which is now UFO folklore and treated as truth. I mean, you know what I mean? I mean, there's a whole, it's almost like a religion. And these same people, like Bill Schneider, Bill Schneider?
Oh, sure.
The geologist who went down and battled the aliens with the CIA.
Oh, yeah.
All of that folklore from those bulletin boards and the CompuServe boards and AOL and all that stuff has turned from just fantasy or whatever and is now treated as fact by so many people. I saw Clifford Stone on Chasing UFOs or whatever it was before it went off the air, and he was crying. I mean, he was acting like
he had the crying thing down pat.
I was like, dude.
The last few years, every time he was interviewed, he'd get to a point where he would break down in tears. I mean, it got to be funnier than hell to watch that because, I know how much it is bullshit. Now, a lot of people kind of gravitated away from me. They didn't appreciate my take on things because, I'll call a shovel a frickin' spade. You know what I'm saying? These bullshit artists that have permeated the field for a long time now, there is no factor anymore to really sit down and throw the chaff out from the wheat. There's no clearinghouse. Now, when Victor and I were still publishing UFO Magazine, that was a point of pride with us. The field is so Looney Tune anyway, which is not to say that there isn't a hardcore diamond that's still in the rough, but you've got to wade through the malarkey before you get to that, and that's what we were doing. Now, one more thing about Cliff, and then I want to move along. One day, and this would have been about 1992, he called me up at UFO Magazine. Now, at the time, I thought, hey, I enjoy talking to Cliff. Cliff's a grand guy. I mean, he's friendly, he's personable, all that kind of stuff. But this kind of changed the way I looked at Cliff after this conversation. He said, Don, I have to tell you something. I don't know if he thought I was going to write an article about it or what. And I said, yeah, Cliff, what? He said, look, man, he said, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. And I said, okay, what happened? He said, well, I was outside working around my house. And I said, okay. And he said, this car pulled up in front of my house. And I said, all right, and I'm waiting for the punchline. He said, three guys got out, and they came up to me and they said, we want to take you somewhere to show you something. And I'm waiting, and, I can hear Cliff lighting another cigarette in the background. And I said, okay, so what happened? I said, what'd they want? He said, well, they wouldn't tell me, but they told me to get my jacket. I said, okay, what'd you do? Well, I went in and got my jacket. Oh, all right. But I slipped my .357 Magnum into my pocket. I said, okay. So he goes out. This is his story. He goes out, gets in the car. They drive out to the country somewhere. And then they get out. They stop at a lonely, desolate place. They get out of the car, tell Cliff to get out. And the one guy, and I swear to God, this is what he told me. He said, the one guy, stood in front of me, and he said, okay, we know you have a gun in your pocket. I want you to shoot me. And I said, what? Cliff? No, wait a minute. Are you drunk? No. And I said, what the hell do you mean they wanted you to shoot them? He said, well, this is what the guy said. And I'm thinking now, Cliff, did you miss your medication? And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, I pulled my gun out, and I shot. Okay. He said, and nothing happened. I said, what? He said, yeah. He said, I shot. He said, I shot him a couple of times. But he said, he was there, but he wasn't there. Nothing happened. And I can remember rolling my eyes, and I said, okay, well, look, Cliff, we're on deadline. I got to get going here, pal. I'll talk to you later. But, I never forgot that. And then I kept an eye on Cliff for a long time after that. And he slipped the bounds of reality as far as I'm concerned. Either that or he was an attention-seeking whore. And I think it's probably a combination.
Oh, there's trust me, there's a lot of that going on.
Well, okay, now, can we get back to Cooper?
Yeah, please.
Okay. You got me wound up now. So, it was about roughly late 1989. Now, a number of things happened in late 89 that all seemed to accumulate. First off, I'm sure you guys are aware of UFO Cover-Up Live.
Yeah.
The 2-hour television program that was aired in October of 1988, right? You guys saw that?
Yep.
Seen it.
Okay.
Obviously not then, but yeah, since.
Okay. Now, that was still in many regards reverberating around because on this program, which incidentally, I know Tracy Torme very well, one of the guys that wrote originally for that show, and who was the producer that flew down to Gulf Breeze, Florida, because the Ed Walters UFO, the Gulf Breeze UFO thing, was very hot at that time. Actually, the reason he wanted to get the hell out of L.A. was, as he told me later, I could see what a train wreck this show was developing in. Now, what do I mean by a train wreck? Well, the guy that produced the show, that was the executive producer, was a guy by the name of Michael Zeligman. And when they were first putting this thing together, okay, Bill Moore and Jamie Chandra, I think Chandra was involved, set up a meeting, okay, in the Great Lakes on a deserted island, or on an isolated, I should say, island, with Seligman and their quote-unquote intelligence insiders that later came on the program as Falcon and Condor, okay? Now, whatever they told Seligman scared the bejesus out of him. Scared him. I mean, to the point where when he came back to L.A., he was so paranoid that he was certain his phones were tapped. He would whisper to people in the offices because he thought there were intelligence people around keeping an eye on him. And he decided that for this show, and one of the reasons it came off so hokey was he had everybody give their lines from cue cards. In other words, if somebody said something on that program, they were reading it from a cue card. It was not a free and open exchange like we're having right here.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there were a lot of people that were yammering at the bit about if you remember this show, the aliens love strawberry ice cream. The aliens love Tibetan music. The aliens are here. All this crap. Now, so 1989 is rolling along, and KLAS-TV down in Las Vegas, Nevada, busted a huge story that ended up reverberating around the entire planet. And it was the Area 51 story. And they brought on, in electronic blackout, a guy who used the pseudonym of Dennis, who claimed that he had worked at Area 51 at an even more secret site called S4 on recovered alien technology. Which of course was Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
That was what was happening there. But John Lear, who was down in Las Vegas, knew Lazar, and of course he knew George Knapp, the TV reporter that brought this to the world, and knew all the principals, was very deeply involved in all this. Now, Lear was garnering a national reputation as being a UFO investigator researcher. And he was speaking all around the country at these various UFO events that were popping up like weeds in your garden, at the time. Now, there was another guy who was a JFK researcher. He was a kind of a rogue journalist, very much into the conspiracy aspects of things, investigating things, and not necessarily UFOs. He never really glommed onto that. But he was into things like the Marcos gold shipments and the Iran-Contra arms shipments and that kind of stuff, And but he was always fascinated by the JFK story. Now, he met up with two guys out of Texas who were also JFK researchers. And these two guys, one's name was Perry Adams, and I forget now who the other guy was. But these guys were working on the assumption that the JFK assassination was actually an inside job. And when I say inside, I'm talking about inside the limo. Now, they were able to get their hands on fifth generation maybe copy of the Zapruder film. And anyway, Lars Hansen met up with these guys. They became co-workers. They were all working on this together. They were trying to enhance the film. They inadvertently washed all the Keller out of it. Now, this is where everything went sideways. When they were playing this thing back for just an instant on the film, which now is even another generation older, it looked for just a second like a handgun flashed. Just as Kennedy is struck in the head by the bullet, by the assassin's bullet. And Kennedy's body is jerked violently to the rear and the side. And then this scene is gone, Now, Lars Hansen ended up making a demo tape of that and narrated on it, And when he was in Las Vegas, he saw a flyer that John Lear was going to be speaking at some library about UFOs. And when he saw that, not knowing that Bill Lear, John Lear's father, had disinherited Lear before Bill Lear died, because Lear was such an asshole, that maybe John Lear could finance their research. So he went down to this UFO event, introduced himself to John, told him what he was working on, and gave John Lear a copy of this tape. Now, the caveat was, now this is just for your own personal use. I want you to look at this, okay? I want you to look at it and see what you think. Now, in November of 1989, just when all this was happening in Las Vegas, now Lear and I had been keeping semi-regularly in touch. And I had called Lear up about something. I don't even remember anymore what it was about. But he said, hey, look, he said, I'm giving a talk. I think it was on the 18th or the 19th of November. I'm giving a talk at the Association for Former Intelligence Members. And he said, if you'd like to come down, he said, you can come in and be my guest. So I said, yeah. He said, besides, I've got something here really, really hot. I said, oh, really? What's that? He said, well, I'm not going to tell you on the phone, but all I can tell you is it's hot. I said, cool, I'll be there. So I went out and bought a plane ticket. Flew down there and got into Vegas, got a hold of Lear, went out to his house, went into his den, and sat down. He poured me a drink, and we're sitting there chatting a little bit. And he said, now, he said, look at this. And he popped this videotape in, and I watched that, and at first, I got to tell you, the first time I saw that, I'm thinking to myself, holy shit, is that possible? And, oh, man, okay, well, where'd you get that? Can't tell you. Got it from an intelligence contact. And I said, John, wait a minute. What do you mean you can't tell me? No, can't tell you. Promised I wouldn't say. Of course, what he didn't tell me was, as soon as he got this damn thing, he copied it and sent a copy to Bill Cooper. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I go to this meeting with Lear. And I'm sitting in there, and they have a turkey dinner because it's a week before Thanksgiving. And I'm about half in the bag, and I'm watching him give this talk. And this place is just jammed with all these former intelligence people that belong to this organization. It's kind of like like a military veterans organization, like the DAV or the Military Order of the Purple Heart or the VFW. So then John has a Q&A with the audience after he runs this tape. And he asked, he said, well, now, if you had been in your intelligence organization at the time of the JFK murder, and he said, and your supervisor or your boss or your commanding officer would have come in and told you that they were part of this plot to get rid of Kennedy, I want to know, is there anybody in here that would have been willing to go along with this? And I swear to God, 4 people, and I'll never forget this, 4 people raised their hands. A couple of them were female. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, holy shit. Okay? So, I go back home and I write an article about this, and it's for UFO Magazine, all right? And then, and incidentally, in the meantime, I still was on semi-civil relations with Bill Cooper. But then the final straw, as far as I was concerned with Cooper, was when he came out claiming loudly to the world and any place that he could get a public platform that he had been sitting since about 1972 or 73, sitting on the greatest secret ever. And I've been looking for it for years, by God, and I finally found a copy of it. The video that proves that the limousine Secret Service driver of John F. Kennedy's limousine was the guy that fired the fatal headshot into JFK. Now, I mean, don't try to bullshit a bullshitter, boys. I was there. And later, not much later, I found out where it came from. And it was from Lars Hansen. Now, Cooper immediately began to commercially produce this tape. All right? And for about 3 years, it set the JFK research field once again sideways and on its ear by this guy's blatant lying, plagiarization, and what have you. Now, you remember what the original question was, Guy. The original question was some of the craziest things that I've seen in my career, right?
Yeah.
Is Guy there, or did he,
yeah,
did he take a bathroom?
I'm right here, man. I'm right here. I'm just listening to you, man. Eating Halloween candy.
I thought maybe you took a break back to little boy's room. Well, then things got even weirder because Lear and Cooper, then, they were a dynamic duo for a short while, were being interviewed together. Lear about his paper and Cooper about the JFK thing. And I believe it was a TV program called Inside Magazine or something like that was being shot down in John Lear's home in Las Vegas. And they were each interviewed separately. Now, one of the things that suddenly gave pause to Lear was when he heard Cooper tell the interviewer while he was being interviewed that he had seen copies of a document in his Navy files that were called the O.H. Krill documents. Now, the O.H. Krill documents were actually, once again, one of these paranoid delights that surfaced during that period of time from another contact to John Lear, a guy who was at the time active duty U.S. Air Force, not long before this guy retired. And basically it was later a section from a book that this guy put together called The Matrix. Now, the O.H. Krill documents basically were, and the name, how the name got put on this thing was a story in itself. Lear and this guy, and his name right now is escaping me, but this guy and Lear had gotten these documents together. Incidentally, they ended up in that package that Lear had sent me. And I asked Lear, I said, where did the name O.H. Krill come from? Well, Krill was actually from a UFO incident that took place in the late 50s with a woman back in Maryland who basically had gone to Navy intelligence telling them that she was in contact mental contact with an extraterrestrial, and these guys, whatever she told them was enough to make them come out to her home and witness her do a channeling session where this alien, Krill, is how he identified himself, was giving her information. Now, if you go back, you got to go back through the documents and the records to find this incident. But I was familiar with that particular case. So, as a joke, Lear and this other guy decided to throw the name Krill on these documents. And the OH, they just pulled out of thin air. Well, Cooper claimed that he had seen these documents in Navy files back in the early 70s, OH Krill, which Cooper said meant His Omnipotent Highness Krill. Okay? Now, Lear knew that he was full of shit, okay? Lear knew that Cooper was full of shit. And they had a falling out. But as it turned out, MUFON, at the time run by Walt Andrus, the original founder and original head honcho of MUFON, that year of 1990, they were holding the MUFON International Symposium in Las Vegas. And guess who the state director was for MUFON for the state of Las Vegas? John Lear. So, Lear invited me to be a speaker because of the research that I was doing on mutilations. And for about 3 years, I was very, very heavily involved in an aspect, and it's something I don't often talk about, but it involved human mutilations, all right? And for about 3 years, I banged my head on the wall trying to break through that, and I couldn't, and I finally said, that's it, I quit. You know, I quit with that aspect of it. But he invited me, he invited another guy by the name of Bill English, and that's another story in itself. Once again, another wackadoodle, as he ended up being, and Bill Cooper and John Lear. Now, Lear, and I got to give Lear credit. You know, when it counted, he was willing to pull out and take his what he ended up being his private symposium down the street to another hotel, because Walt Andrus and the board at MUFON were very, very upset at the speakers that Lear had. As a matter of fact, when I checked into the hotel down there, Walt Andrus walked up to me and he told me, he said, I understand you were invited by John Lear to speak about your mutilation research. And I said, yes, Walt, that's true. He said, well, I want to tell you, if you speak for John Lear about that, you'll never speak at another MUFON symposium again.
I
said, okay, thanks. Huh?
Red Drag Skull.
Yeah. Well, as a matter of fact, that was the last time I ever spoke at a MUFON symposium. So we had our thing on Sunday, and MUFON threatened to disbar Lear and the whole schmear, and Lear said, fine. He said, look, he said, if you guys do that, he said, hey, do it. He said, but I'll go down the street to another hotel. He said, I'll rent a room down there, and I'll guarantee you that I'll take the whole damn kit and caboodle of participants down with me. So Andrus relented. Now, this was all in the aftermath, just a few hours before, of Bill Moore's electrifying speech, where Moore admitted, that he had worked with intelligence officers to disenfranchise Paul Benowitz. But that's another story in itself. So to say that everything at this symposium was in a turmoil would be an understatement. I mean, people were running around with their thumb up their ass and their finger in their nose. Things were so great. Okay?
No, changed.
Nothing much. Although, you don't see those huge crowds. I mean, hell, when I spoke about my research, there must have been 700 or 800 people in there. So it was a pretty big crowd. So anyway, to get back to the story. So Lars Hansen, okay, now in the meantime, is trying to get Bill Cooper to stop showing his tape. And Cooper told him, in essence, go piss up a rope, I'll do what I want to do. I mean, one thing you can never take away from Cooper, you know, he was a brazen SOB. So now there were some of the huge names in JFK research were getting pulled into this, people like Bob Groden and others. Now, you know, to say that they, well, of course, everybody knows what happened to Cooper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Very sad.
Well, there's not much sad about it. I mean, it was self-inflicted, for God's sake. The guy was a nut job. But Cooper, by that time, or very shortly after that, had burned all the bridges he had in the UFO field, and then he migrated into the Patriot movement. And then he caused that movement to break out in turmoil. And, you know, he was a militia leader with about a membership of one, but he began broadcasting on shortwave radio out of, I think it was back east in Tennessee or Kentucky.
Time of the hour.
The Hour of the Time.
The Hour of the Time, was it, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Until he couldn't pay his bills. He lost that show, and then he holed himself up in where he was living in Arizona, and basically was wanted for bank fraud, tax fraud, and ultimately threatened somebody with a handgun, and the police went out to arrest him, and we all know what happened. But that was one crazy case. By the way, how much time do we have?
Another hour and a half, so.
Oh, okay. Well, then I had another crazy case that actually emanated out of the UK, Sasha.
Oh, what was that?
That was the Highgate vampire case.
Oh, this is what I've been dying to.
I had occasion in 1981, 1982. I was a lead investigator on 2 cattle mutilation cases. Okay. As a matter of fact, they happened right now. They happened on Halloween.
Oh, really?
Now that I think about it, yeah.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah. It was just about, my God, it's been 30 years. Holy smokes, 30 years.
Whoosh.
Gee, time does fly when you're having fun. So I get out to this guy's farm. And the animal was like maybe 30, 35 yards from his back door. And it had rained on Halloween night, so, I mean, the ground was muddy. And I go out there. The animal, of course, is dead. It's mutilated. It had an eye excised. The skin going down its jaw was missing. Its sexual organs had been removed. And its anus had been cored out. And the animal, as it turned out, was devoid of blood. It was exsanguinated. Now, I looked around. Of course, at the time, I didn't know that much about mutilations, about cattle mutilations. I looked around. There were no cigarette butts around the animal. There were no gum wrappers. There were no footprints. And like I said, it had rained, right?
Yeah.
And I was stumped. And I got to tell you, and here was the other thing. The guy had a couple of dogs. He had his house that was not far from the animal. Wife, he had several kids. And later when I talked to him, he said, well, a couple of years ago I had an animal that was mutilated. This was in, incidentally, southeastern Idaho. He said, I had an animal that had been mutilated, and he said, I thought it was, it was humans that did it. I didn't know what it was, devil worshippers or just some sick son of a bitch. But he said, for a long time, I never traveled anywhere without my high-powered rifle in my truck. And he said nothing else happened, so finally I put the rifle away. And he said, look, this happened. So not more than a mile away was another farm that the same night another animal had been mutilated. So, you know, there was not much to go on, and I thought it was kind of funny because my department, the state, wanted this thing closed up and basically shoveled under the rug. Now, it wasn't until years later when I bought my first computer system. It was the same time that I discovered the MJ-12 papers and the John Lear document that I stumbled across a number of cases, and primarily that emanated at the time from Linda Moulton Howe, who was at that time known for her cattle mutilation research, that I stumbled across this, and it was like that guy, you may remember that old Ford truck commercial from years ago where the guy is sitting there and suddenly the light pops on above his head. Oh, a Ford! Well, I was like, oh, cow mutilations. So you know, that unfortunately, I guess in hindsight, that stuck with me, and that got me rolling on what I was doing originally. So about 4 years later, I was back east visiting family. And my sister, who was an LPN at the time, and her husband, who was a PA, a physician's assistant, and he was in the Navy, but he was serving as a Marine Corps corpsman out at 29 Palms, were on leave, and they were visiting back there too. So my sister and her husband enjoyed weird stuff. You know, they liked tales of supernatural and that kind of thing. We're sitting back there, and I told them about this cattle mutilation that I had investigated. So we're sitting there talking, and I said, you know, one of the weirdest things that just always stuck with me was the fact that those two cows were exsanguinated, which means all the blood was missing, all the blood was gone. And his name was Tim, my brother-in-law's name was Tim, looked at me and he said, well, Don, he said, have you ever heard about what happened over in London? And I said, no, what are you talking about? Because I thought he was talking about mutilations. He said, I heard about this story that took place in this cemetery there called Highgate. And supposedly, a guy was in this cemetery, and he was in this old vault, and there were like 3 or 4 coffins in the vault, and he said there was an extra one in there that was empty. And then he said a short while later, he said he went back and checked, and the coffin was full. Now, this is what my brother-in-law told me. Now, this is a story he got. And I said, what do you mean it was full? And he said, you're not going to believe this. And I said, well, lay it on me. Well, supposedly it was a real, honest-to-God vampire. And I said, bullshit. He said, no. He said, I'm telling you. And I said, okay, all right. Well, I got to tell you, secretly, I was kind of excited about that. I thought, well, I knew him. I knew my brother-in-law. And, you know, the guy is a PA, or was. He died a couple of years ago from cancer. But he said, you know, if he told me this, I thought, well, gee, there might be something to this. So I kind of tucked it away in the back of my mind. Now, remember, at this time, there was no Internet. So it was in the mid-'90s. And Vicki and I as a matter of fact, still have a very good friend who at the time was an editor with Cinescape magazine, which always had all the up-and-coming Hollywood blockbusters and everything. And we had traded subscriptions with him. He got a copy of UFO, and he sent us Cinescape. So one day, the new magazine came, I guess This would have been about 1995. And I'm going through the magazine, and I see this new movie that's coming out. And it's called Vampires. Now, I got to tell you, in electronics, I've always been a sucker for electronics. Okay? Anything new came out with electronics, buddy, I'm out there checking it out. Same thing with vampire movies. I'm a sucker for a good vampire movie. And I read this, and it was about a group of Vatican-sponsored vampire hunters. And James Woods in it, who's incidentally one of my favorite actors. Really.
Yeah, that's one of that's the John Carpenter.
Exactly.
Movie.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Well, John Carpenter, did Halloween back in 77, 78. So hell yeah, I thought if this is a John Carpenter movie with James Woods, this has got to be tops. So I told Vicki about it, and I said, well, look, sweets, this is a deal. When they release this movie, I'm going to be at the first showing. And you can be with me because, she's kind of iffy about, vampire movies. But she said, cool. So we went to, when it came out, I think it was 96, we were there. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed it to no end. So I get home. Now, 1996, now we got an internet. And suddenly it hit me. Damn! Vampires. Highgate. Oh, yeah. So I started doing a little checking on this. And sure enough, there was a ton of stuff on the Highgate Vampire on the web. But here was the other thing. It seemed like two of the principals who at the time in 1969, 1970, during that time frame, were involved, two names were at each other's throats. Okay? So I'm reading up on this, and I'm kind of interested, and then I kind of let it go for a while. So a couple of years pass, and, I discover that this movie, Vampires, was based on a novel by a guy out of Texas by the name of John Stakely. And I had gotten a copy of that book, and I read it. And it was pretty good, I got to tell you. I thought it was good. But then I thought to myself, hell, I'm a writer. I appreciate a good vampire story. I've been threatening to write a book. Hell, I think I could write a book that's better than this. So I began to do some heavy-duty research, not only on the mythology of vampires, but on the Highgate vampire case. Now, we get into the early part of the last decade. It's in July, hotter than hell here in Southern California. And it was a Sunday, and I told Vicki I was going to go out and trim the hedges around our house. So I'm out with my electric clippers, and like I said, it was hot. The sun was beating down. I'm sweaty. I'm chopping away at these bushes, and my hands were sweaty. And I lost my grip on my electric clippers, and they started to fall, and like a dumbass, I grabbed it with my left hand and almost cut my little finger off on my left hand. And I dropped the clippers, and I'm looking at my hand. The blood is spurting out, and suddenly it hit me. Yeah, I got the hook to my... Now, this is going to sound like it's crap, but it's true. What if vampires were real and the CIA got their hands on one? At that instant, then I grabbed my hand, went inside, and we rushed to the hospital. They ended up bandaging up my arm. Now, with that in mind, I started seriously to work on this novel. Now, in the meantime, I'm doing my show, my radio show. So I've got a very good friend, very dear friend in the UK, who's a very well-known paranormal researcher by the name of John Spencer. And as a matter of fact, John had been the former chairman of BUFORA, the British UFO Research Organization. And John knows where all the bodies are buried, So I called him up, and I said, John, I got a question for you. Are you familiar with a case that took place in England called the Highgate vampire case? And he said, yeah. He said, I've heard of it. He said, I never did any research on it. He said, I got to tell you, it doesn't sound very likely. So I said, well, look, there are a couple of guys whose names are involved with this case, and the guy that I would really love to talk to is the guy that supposedly ended up staking this vampire, and his name is Patrick Sean Manchester. And I told him where Manchester was living, because I knew where he was living, and I said, do me a favor. I said, you're over there, I'm not. I said, check with them. I said, see if you could get a hold of this guy and tell him who I am. And I said, if he has any, questions, I mean, hell, I'm all over the internet. He can Google me. And tell him I'd like to interview him. So John gets back to me about a week later. And he said, well, Don, he said, I contacted those people, and they have no interest in talking to you. Now, I got to tell you, that kind of hit me strangely. It was kind of like when I was a cop. If I went out and I wanted to talk to somebody about a case and they wanted nothing to do with me, the flags started to go up. And I thought, well, here's a guy, because at the time he had a bunch of websites. Incidentally, not ones that he paid for, freebies that he could get and then put whatever he wanted up there.
Yeah, like tripod and
yeah. And he was screaming to the world that vampires were real, and he was Europe's best known vampire hunter. Now, okay, all right, and he doesn't want to talk to me, huh? So I did a little more research, and I found something else. I found out that the BBC had interviewed him at one point on Halloween, okay? Now, this was a live chat that took place in the UK online, and obviously it was during the run of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, because he got a couple of questions in there. But I read through this, and let me see if I can find the... here are a couple of things I want to read. One person asked him if he had ever been at risk when he was out searching for real, honest-to-God, blood-sucking vampires. And he says, yes, on more than one occasion I've been at great risk at the presence of vampires. The first time was in the early 1970s, and a number of times since. In 1990, I was confronted by a predatory wraith or vampire in West Yorkshire while investigating the Kirklees vampire, which incidentally is where Robin Hood is supposed to be buried at. Now, so a guy asked him then, so how many vampires have you caught? Well, he doesn't claim to be catching them. He claims to be staking them and then cutting off their heads. Because, of course, as we all know, the only way to put down a vampire is to drive a wooden or an ash stake into their chest, right? And then cut off their head with a grave digger's spade, all right? All this stuff came out of this guy. So he says, well, I've done scores. I have personally exercised, which is a nice way of saying I've staked them, quite a number. Precise number I couldn't tell you, but after 33 years of vampire hunting, quite a few. So now I know that this guy is either out of his flaming mind, all right, or he's running one hell of a scam. So, in the
or
meantime,
he's got a bunch of bodies in his basement.
Headless bodies.
But, now I'm really interested because I want to know what in the hell's at the bottom of this. So in the meantime, I'm writing my book. So I get my novel done, okay? I send it to my publisher, and she read it, and she got back to me, and she wanted a few minor things changed, and I took care of that, and then she sent it off. She published it. Gateway Press. And actually a subsidiary of Gateway Press, Dark Realms Press. So, the book comes out. Now I got that off my back. Now Vicki and I are still doing UFO Magazine, and it's every month at the time. And, other than UFO, though, and I was still doing occasional TV appearances, guesting on a number of radio shows, and I was doing my show, but I had little time. So I started doing, once again, Highgate reared its head. I started doing a little more research, and I came across a podcast here in the States. I think it was called Worlds of the Unexplained. And I'm going down through their archives, and guess what I found? I found 2 interviews, one with Manchester and the other with Manchester's arch nemesis. Does that sound suitably hoity-toity there, Satya?
Yeah.
A guy by the name of David Farrant. So I call up John again. I said, John, it's Don. Yeah, Don, how you doing? I said, good. Look, do you remember when I wanted you to get in touch with those guys at the Highgate Vampire? Yeah? Well, I found another guy I'd like to get in touch with, and he's over there too. And his name is David Farrant. He says, okay, I'll see what I can do. So he gets a contact for me. I go through the contact and tell him who I am and what my interest is. And David Farrant says, yeah, I'll talk to him. So I called David up in London and had a lovely chat with him. And he was open, didn't matter what the hell I asked him. He told me everything he knew, and he told me lots and lots and lots about this feud with Manchester and the inside scoop on old Sean. What Sean was really, I think, terrified that I was going to find out. Well, so my book is published, and it's up on Amazon. It's out in some bookstores. And, what will any author tell you? They want to get their book out there. They want people to know about their books. So I go up to Amazon. They have all kinds of chat rooms up there. And I found one on vampires, I'm pretty sure it was vampires. And so I go in there, and I'm very gently mentioning my novel. And in the meantime, I had listened to both these interviews with Manchester and Farrant on World of the Unexplained. And the one thing that I had always been hot to find out, and this was my cop side coming out, was in Manchester's book. And incidentally, I bought 2 books, had to go to the UK to get them, UK Amazon. He wrote a book, and as I later found out, it was a revised edition called The Highgate Vampire. And then he wrote another book called The Handbook for Hunting Vampires or something. So I ordered both of them, okay? They got here about a week or so later, and I literally dropped everything, and I read those 2 books, cover to cover. Now, in a way, I was kind of sorry. It cost me about $40 at the time. I was sorry I did it, but I had to know. And his book, The Highgate Vampire, was like reading very bad Bram Stoker, okay? Very bad Bram Stoker. And he alleges that not only, okay, did the Highgate vampire turn one person into a genuine undead vampire, but he attacked another person that good old Sean, the fearless vampire hunter, was able to save. Now,
bless him.
and I'm thinking, yeah, right, in your dreams, pal. But what about the girl that was turned into a vampire? So I'm thinking, well, if this really happened, how would you prove it? And now, I had been a cop a long time. I had been in the Army. I'd been in a war zone. You know, and I'm thinking, if there really were vampires out there, don't you think I might have gotten a hint somewhere along the line? Well, I never did. Why? Well, because there are no such thing, at least not the supernatural kind. So, well, who was this chick that was turned into a vampire? Because Manchester never identified her. He gave her a pseudonym, called her Lucia. So, I could never find out who this was until I heard this interview with David Farrant, and he identified her. Her real name was Jacqueline Cooper. Okay, now I had something to go on. So I contact my buddy John Spencer once again and said, John, this is where she's supposed to be buried. And I gave him the name of the cemetery, and I said, you know, at your leisure, I mean, this is not anything hot, but at your leisure, if you could, and I mean, you know, the guy's an investigator, call up the cemetery and find out if they have a record with this girl's name. So he did. Ultimately, he got back to me and said they don't have any record of her. Okay. So I'm up on this supernatural forum now on Amazon, and I'm talking about the Highgate vampire. And I said, by the way, have any of you ever heard of Highgate? Now, this is what supposedly happened. And I kind of laid out a short version of, you know, this vampire being discovered in the Highgate Cemetery, et cetera, ad nauseum. And he supposedly turned this chick into a vampire. And in the book written by this guy Manchester, he identified her as Lucia. I found out her real name. It's Jacqueline Cooper. And, you know, and somebody said, oh, the guy is bonkers, okay? You know, and, yeah, well, he's either bonkers or he's an opportunist or something, okay? Maybe he's off his meds, I don't know. But, you know, so it's not like the case was unheard of. So suddenly, 2 days later, I come into my office, turn on my computer, and my email is overflowing. And I look, and I'm thinking it's probably, you know, is this spam or what? And it's called, the header on it was from the FOBSM. And that kind of struck me as odd. You know, I thought I had seen that or heard it somewhere. FOBSM, what the hell's that? So I open it up, and it's from an organization called the Friends of Bishop Sean Manchester. And on the one hand, I'm kind of happy. Well, I'll be damned. Look who's writing me. Wow. And the note is unsigned, okay? Totally unsigned. But it's demanding that I delete Jacqueline Cooper's name from that note that I had up on the Amazon chat group. Now, I immediately put my detective hat on, and I'm thinking, well, you know, if this was from Jackie Cooper, I could understand it. And if this was from her family, and she was really dead, well, I could understand that too. But who the hell are these people demanding I remove that? So I stopped for a second, took a deep breath, and I wrote them back, and I said, look, my name is Don Ecker, I'm a researcher, an investigator, a radio broadcaster. And if you check me out, I mean, it's not like I'm an unknown entity. And if I'm going to talk to you about this, I appreciate knowing who I'm talking to. So if you want to talk to me, have the courtesy to sign your email. And I sent it back. So a short time later, I get another note back. Well, my name is unimportant, but what is important is the fact that you went on the word of a convicted felon, David Farrant, and, they really went off on me. But then, at the bottom of the note was a signature, Katrina Garford Bless, who claimed that she was the secretary for Bishop Manchester. Now, Satya, let me tell you, when I read that and I'm thinking, suddenly it struck me, because by this time I was familiar with this guy. This guy has stalked people literally worldwide. He has stalked them. He has caused problems for them. He has called up people's employers. He has slandered and libeled them online. But here's the important thing. All this crap he did from the anonymity of a pseudonym. The son of a bitch, let me say that a little more clearly.
Was it?
The son of a bitch no, was not man enough to put his own damn name to it. Okay? In essence, he's a goddamn coward from behind his computer desk using his sock puppets to go around the globe. Now, after a series of emails with him, and then as Katrina Garford Bless, this guy insults me because I'm American, okay? Not only American, but he must have did a little research. I'm also a military veteran that served in Vietnam. So now I'm a no-good son of a bitch, okay? Because I wore a uniform and went off, and fought a war. And it's obvious he has a high distaste for Americans. Well, I have a high distaste for assholes. So, I thought, okay, pal, you don't want to man up. You don't want to talk to me. You don't even want to email me. You're going to do all this from the anonymity of your keyboard under somebody else's name. That's cool. So what I did was I got back in touch with David Farrant, and I brought him on to do the first of several interviews I did on the Highgate case. Now, to show you what an attention-seeking whore Manchester is, and unscrupulous to boot, all right, back at the height, and I mean, you can find this stuff out on the web, but at the height of this feud where actually Manchester mostly was going after Farrant and libeling and slandering Farrant, they were going to have a duel. Honest to God, a real duel in France, okay?
Idiots.
With swords.
Oh, my God.
With swords, okay? So, David Farrant, and he was laughing at a lot of this, but wait till you hear. So, what Manchester did, now Farrant I don't even think was there, but supposedly the time and the date of the duel happened. And somebody was there to take photographs, and they photographed Manchester laying on the ground, clasping his saber, okay, with what looked like blood running down, his mouth. And they actually, now, I swear to God, well, I sent you the report I did on it, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. They actually then created a memorial fund for Manchester, soliciting people to donate money so they could ship his body back to England to be buried. Okay? Now, the guy was no more dead than I am. So, now, with all these pictures, and I've got a facsimile of this memorial fund. But that isn't the funny part. The funny part was when Metropolitan CID, the London police, went to David Farrant's flat. And they knocked on the door. He goes to the door, not having a clue what the hell's going on. These two guys, detectives, identify themselves, and they demand to know where Manchester's body is. And he said, his body? I don't know. Why? And they said, well, we have reports that you were in a duel with him, and he was killed. So Farrant, who's got a very funny sense of humor, looked at him for a second. He said, it took place in France, huh? Well, you better get Interpol on it because you don't have any jurisdiction.
Nice.
Oh, God. But this guy is genuinely Looney Tune.
Well, when you were telling me about him the other week when we were talking, and when you told me where he lived, I just can't stop laughing at it because he lives in Bournemouth, right? That's right, isn't it? Yeah? Okay. Bournemouth is like really right at the bottom end of the country, to the bottom and to the left. And it is just so it parodied in everything for it's old people. Old people go there on holiday. It's full of pensioners because there's not a lot going on there, and it's quite nice and it's quite warm, And I just had this thing going on in my head as all these old people, all sitting on deck chairs with blankets, sticking their tongue out before the ice cream gets to the face, and then there's this guy running around with a wooden stake held aloft. You know what I mean? I don't know, because it's like, how I kind of like picture Florida, except with a lot less.
Well, this guy, I wrote a report up on this, okay, my investigation into the Highgate vampire. And, among other things, I discovered through my research and my investigation that this gal, Jackie Cooper, who, incidentally, back in the day was quite a hot little number, was named as a co-respondent by Manchester's first wife on why they got divorced. And I included that in my paper. I included the fact that the guy, the bishop, that brought him into their denomination, which, incidentally, is the Old Catholic Church. And there is a real denomination, okay? And Manchester has been identifying himself as a bishop of Bournemouth for a long time, and they don't have a bishop in Bournemouth. But this, this was...
They only have priests to deliver the last rites.
Yeah. Well, at one point, Manchester was involved in the practice of black magic. And when that came to the attention of the Old Catholic Church, all right...
Oh, what kind of magic are they practicing then? With all
who knows? Yeah, who knows? But they tossed him out, okay? And then he turned around and said he tossed the real bishop out. So now, when I talk to a number of people in the Old Catholic Church and over in the UK and people here in the States, I've come to the conclusion, and it's strictly my conclusion, that this whole thing, because the UK, and I think, Sacha, you will confirm this, they have a very, very high tax rate. And
we have no industry left. The entire country's economy is based on its tax.
Right. Well, you see, it's a tax dodge. If you're a man of the clergy,
yeah,
it's a tax dodge.
You only need 500 members to become some kind of bishop, pope, whatever. It's true.
So anyway, I put on my detective hat, and that really pissed this guy off. So he went after me. Now, for a while, he was stalking me around the web. Okay. Now, during the course of all this, I did a little more investigation, and I contacted a number of people that he had stalked besides myself. All right. One was an electronic games designer by the name of Alex Lucard. Now, if you spell his name Dracula, and Manchester discovered that. Manchester discovered that and started. And as a matter of fact, you can find stuff up on the web about this. Lucard, I don't remember now if he ended up having to get a lawyer or something to get this maniac off his case. But, you see, he thought he was going to pull the same horse shit with me. So what I did was I started making a few phone calls, and then I featured him prominently for a while on my radio show. And finally, I think he got he finally, it sunk into his walnut-sized brain that this wasn't going to work. And so I'm happy now to, anytime I get an opportunity with anybody that cares, I'm happy to tell this story because the guy is a menace. Now, it's a good damn thing now that he's pushing 70, okay? Now, just recently, and I'm talking about in the last 6 months, recently, this Manchester moron, okay, was friends with a guy who's a triathlete in the UK. Somebody that's currently working, I'm not sure for whom, but he's working for some corporation in the Middle East. And he had known Manchester for a long time and had taken photographs of Manchester in Manchester's Nazi room. You haven't heard his Nazi room. Okay. Pictures of Hitler, pictures of swastikas, pictures of all this stuff, that World War II Nazi stuff. It's like a shrine. Now, when that became public, and like I said, it's been about six months or so ago, suddenly Manchester was trying to diffuse all this by claiming he was a German militaria merchant. He'd buy and sell this stuff. But I'll tell you, the guy is warped. I mean, when he finally bites the bullet, and he's pushing 70 now, when he finally bites the bullet, they're going to have to screw him into the ground.
If probably pick up a vampire, get bit and be immortal, and be a daywalker.
But that was another crazy thing that I've encountered, Guy.
Yeah, man, you really know how to attract them, don't you?
I guess it's my karma.
The vampire slayer from Bournemouth. Dun, dun, dun. Oh, my God. I'll say what to go there on holiday. I don't know if it's on the pace.
Don, I would really love to have you on as a regular to recount some of these, stories from the olden days.
Well, no, wait a minute, pal. How old do you think I am?
Well, no, I mean, but you were just, you were intimately involved in all that when all this stuff that is, paraded around as fact, you were all there when it first showed up.
you have to do full research. All you guys, right? You all like to do it for real, where we just go Google. Ooh, I've had a thought. Google. No. It's for love. There is no original sin, is there? You did it all.
God, I'm afraid this is going to follow me,
To the grave and beyond. I just love the fact that he lives in Bournemouth. I mean, it's like where pensioners go to hope they die on holiday. You know what I mean?
Old guy
I hope
sitting there
I don't die alone in my bed. I hope I die on holiday because I love the view.
Drooling into his curtain way.
Sitting there with his garlic necklace and house coat all open.
Brandishing his cross, everybody walks by with a real honest.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one thing about this guy, and it became apparent to me almost immediately, is that he literally has, and I mean has, no sense of humor. Now, for a while, wherever one of these guys, David Farrant, would show up, not long after, Manchester would pop in. You see, when I say he stalks him, I'm dead serious. I couldn't be more serious.
Dead serious.
And it came up on the Randy forum, the James Randi forum. Okay.
Jesus Christ! Yeah.
And finally, now this is no kidding. Finally, they had to ban them all. But there was a guy by the name of, well, it was a pseudonym. I think it was Lamont Higgins. Wrote a series of comics about this feud that was, oh my God, it was wildly popular. And you see, one of the things, and it's funny. I mean, I have copies of it here, and it's very, very funny. But you have to know a little bit about the case, I mean, to appreciate all the humor. But one of the things that this Manchester has a habit of doing, and he tried to tell me that he was going to sue me. And as a matter of fact, in my initial, and I've done several reports on the Highgate case, in my initial report, I put in, after I did the original show with Farrant, what he had up on one of his websites. And he was looking for a freebie lawyer to sue me. Okay? A freebie. He wouldn't, but you see, this is what he does. He threatens to sue somebody. Now, in the UK, okay, they're very litigious conscious. Okay, if somebody says, I'm going to sue you, this is what I've observed, they freak out and they'll immediately step back. I told him, well, you son of a bitch, you want to sue me, I'll see you in court. And, of course, nothing ever happened. But he is a sly snake, this guy. You know, and I guess it's apparent, I really love old Sean Manchester, but he's a real sly one. He'll try to bamboozle you. He'll try to BS you. And, well, I've been BS'd by experts, so, you know, this guy's still in training.
I might just go start hanging out in the Highgate cemetery and spinning my line. Oh, that's just ridiculous anyway. I can't get over the Bournemouth thing. If you even knew Bournemouth, you just... It's like everybody's already dead, you know what I mean? There's no need for a slayer. They just fill in time till it happens.
Well,
no,
now I know more about Bournemouth than I ever wanted to know, Sasha.
Yeah. You know it. It's all false teeth and cauliflower hairdos.
You should go visit him, man.
Yeah. Wait another 50 years.
Manchester. My old nemesis.
Stalk him. I might go to Bournemouth on purpose just to...
Probably pee pants.
Do me Yorkshire Buffy impression.
You know, I've done this whole show in a Jason hockey mask.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, the sun is slowly going down here. I figure we probably got another, maybe 23, 24 minutes, and then it'll be dark. And the things that come creeping in the night will be at our front door demanding candy. We will have confections.
We had some turn up today, early on in the day, and I was like, you're gonna swap masks and come back later. I used to live in a house that had a front door and a back door, not too far from here, and they would literally go to the front door, swap masks, and run around to the back door and try it on again. We had to take note of what clothes they were wearing, not what the distraction was. I've got so many times.
Enterprising little buggers, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, man, it comes to candy.
My little 4 years old, and he's got long blonde hair. You know, a lot of people think he's a girl, and it's like, no, he's just like, he's like a throwback from the Partridge Family. So we got him a Thor costume and a hammer. There's just trim a beard on, he's just been leaping around, you know, like, yeah, that'll do. Part of everything with that rubber hammer on your sugar rush. Yeah, that was quite funny.
So, are the Druids still active over there, Sasha?
Yeah, they are down, in Glastonbury, and there's a few, sort of dotted here and there, but they all take it too far and call themselves things like King Arthur and then Brian Damage.
It's like a glorified rent fair now.
It's absolutely ridiculous. It's so far removed from anything, ever anything.
Well, we went to, Vicki and I went to Stonehenge when we were over there, and I was disappointed because I couldn't get right up to it. They had it roped off. Oh,
it's all roped. That's the thing, isn't it? And then all these hippies, all these peace-loving, somersault. We're all here. It's all so cool and la la la. And then they leave. And you look at the place, and it's just cool for miles. They love everything so much. They're so pagan. They chuck their plastic bottles all over the place. Blah blah blah. Absolutely rubbish for miles and miles and miles. And I'm like, yeah, you're so in touch with the earth. Right. I think really anyone who sort of seriously has this kind of like earth, either pagan or whatever kind of.
You're breaking up there, darling. I didn't catch that last thing.
Talk slow.
I will. Is that all right? We've got a leaflet handed to me that somebody had put through the door, and it was about how Halloween has become, and it's because the god Samhain has been mashed up with a few other gods, Romans included, to create this evil pagan ceremony. Yeah. He says historically
All Hallows Eve, which was created by the Catholic Church for All Hallows Day, which is tomorrow.
Yeah, well, it says here
which is originally in March.
Well, Celtic Festival of Samhain Eve, Samhain being the Celtic god of death. This festival marked the beginning of winter, their new year, and is the night of remembering and talking to the dead in capital letters. And it goes on to say that how they all sacrificed animals while they all had these celebrations. It's like, well, yeah, they would have like stalls, wouldn't they? They'd have a spit roast pig going and all that sort of thing. But anyway, it's a warning against letting your children get involved in this real-life magic that is witchcraft. It goes on about the Freemasons and horoscopes, palm reading, clairvoyance, and Ouija, and then goes on
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and it goes on to say about how all these witches were burned and all the ashes of their bones were sprinkled on this. Oh, it's like, oh my God, it's just like a mad horror story.
Did you keep it? Did you keep it? You need to make a copy and send it to me.
I will. I so will. I was just laughing so much at it. Many witches claim they didn't contact evil spirits, and the gods they worshipped were real gods that were not connected to the devil. They called it the old religion of Wicca. So, and then when
Wicca was originally a nature.
Yeah, but I mean, paganism is kind of so far way back when, like when they all sort of tidied it up and started having politics about it, you know. Are you a hedge witch, or are you a Wiccan, or are you chaos, or?
Yeah, I mean, they did human sacrifice and everything, especially when the Romans were invading. You know, because they were done.
Have the Romans ever done for Wicca?
Well, they wiped them. They tried to wipe them out. The Romans tried to wipe them out.
Aside
they
from
saw
the
them
wiping
as a threat.
out, the torture and that, yeah. Yeah. And I'm just trying to find something that really made me laugh.
Oh, incidentally, are you guys familiar with starpod.org by my friend Gary Beckham?
Oh, Gary Beckham. That name rings a bell.
Bekkum, starpod.org. Anyway.
Yeah, but what's his thing? What's his patter? What's he saying? Because that's the only thing that'll prompt me. I do know his name.
Well, it's not what he's saying. He just published today an article I wrote, which is an unexpurgated history of the UFO topic, the UFO field. It's kind of a thumbnail sketch of the last roughly 50, 60 years with a heavy emphasis on the last 20. But it's up there today, so I've been wanting to tell people about that. I put a link on my Facebook page to it, incidentally.
Starpod?
Yeah, STARPOD.org. O-R-G.
O-R-G?
O-R-G.
Yeah. No, his name rings a bell. I think I've spoken to him a while ago about something, so... Yeah. There's no alarms going off there, by the way. It was just like, oh, yes, what was that about?
Oh, cool. They got some Bigelow stuff on there.
Oh, there's, excuse me, a lot of fascinating information up there. As a matter of fact, he published a number of my papers I wrote on my lunar transient phenomena investigations, moon mysteries, and this thing today, which kind of will give somebody, especially if they're relatively new into the UFO topic, kind of an idea of what's what and what's been happening out there.
Looks pretty cool.
Yeah, keep him busy trying to stay out of trouble.
Yeah, it's all ringing bells now, yeah.
Keeping busy trying to stay out of trouble.
Well, hey, I gotta go. I gotta go trick or treating with my my grandkids.
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, who's going to get all the candy, Guy?
I already bought my own.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, I'm sitting here with York peppermint patties, and I did a bunch of insulin before the show, so that should be good.
Be
So I
flying on
pass
you.
out the shot.
So we wrap it up, let you go terrorising the neighbourhoods and robbing the children of their loot.
That's right, man. Keeping my mask on.
Because all I did was run around like a massive freak and go, ah! And the clocks went back. So obviously the time set for the show ended up being an hour early because in their infinite wisdom we have to chop so it's the bottom of the blanket to make blanket longer.
Do you archive your shows?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
They're all archived. And on the website, citizensane.com. And then, obviously, we sometimes remember to post it on our Facebook pages.
Yeah, you can download it and everything else.
We're doing really well, actually, to say that we are not self-promoting Sir Spamalot the Trolls, are we?
All right, guys.
I thought we'd have 4 fans and that'd be it. You know, like mum, dad, or maybe the guest's wife or husband. So, right then. Well, I'm going to go eat some cake. And,
cake is good.
My Halloween.
Hey, you know something I discovered, and I made sure my wife knew about it. It's a really odd fact, but are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Chocolate has a very, very odd effect. It causes genes to shrink.
Yeah.
And I understand cake may also do that, Sasha.
Yeah.
Cause your genes to shrink, girl. So you
That's why I always said joggers. People think I'm...
Oh, I get it. I'm like, what?
Slow on the uptake there, Guy.
I guess so, man.
Got his mind on something. And he wants to go out. He's like bloody witches that are walking about. I know.
The mask is cutting off my circulation. All right, guys.
This has been fun.
Yeah.
Yes. And I definitely want to have you back. And I definitely want to hear a lot more of. Actually, dude, you need to write a book about all this, so people, can have it as it's important history. It's not just like anecdotal stuff. I mean, it's pretty important. You did a lot of work with this stuff, and I really think it should be out there.
Well, my beloved other half has been telling me the same thing. I just might one of these days sit down and think about that.
Brilliant. And then I should procrastinate about that, and then think about the procrastination, and then somebody to write it for me.
Dude, you should do a whole book on Cal Korff or John Lear. Or, you know what I mean? You could be like the encyclopedia of idiots.
You should do a William Shatner type album.
I tried. Now this is honest to God. I tried desperately to get Cal Korff to come on my program. And
you do know that Philip Ansell had him write for his magazine, don't you?
The what?
Well, he was on mine too.
Yeah. Big Cal Korff, double page spread, all moody and, black and white picture, and he's all, ooh.
Incidentally, for anybody that may still be listening to this radio broadcast, since Sacha or Guy didn't do it, I'm going to do it. I am the host of Dark Matters Radio, which airs Monday through Friday on Cyberstation USA from 10 p.m.
Everyone
Pacific
knows.
time until midnight.
Everybody knows. Everyone knows you.
I just assumed that, everyone knows.
You're like
Well, they
ending
say,
time.
they say no publicity is bad publicity, guys.
I mean, you're Don Ecker, dude. I mean,
Don 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 don. Bitch slaptastic, right?
And if you like horror, and you're in the UK or you're in the US, go to Amazon.com. Look up Past Sins by Don Ecker, a novel of supernatural horror. And incidentally, I got some pretty damn good reviews on that.
I might be able to add mine one day. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I've given him the paddle yet again. I should just bend over.
Well, I have it, and I'm going to read it next.
Yeah, we shall have a critique.
Yes, by all means.
And then we shall talk about
my check is in the mail. My check is in the mail, and I promise, honest to God, I will respect you in the morning.
Yeah, he'll be about as rubber as that I'm going to get on. Okay, guys, dark side. Happy Halloween.
Everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
See you next time.